Hello everyone. In this video session, I am going to explain part 248 of Java for Tester series. That is purpose of inbuilt annotations. So in this video, I am going to explain about few inbuilt annotations. There are a lot of annotations, inbuilt annotations in Java guys. Out of them, I am going to explain few inbuilt annotations and their purposes. Before I explain those few inbuilt annotations in Java, let me first explain the actual purpose of the annotations. Why we have to use annotations in Java? The purpose of the annotations in Java is to provide more or additional information to the Java compiler. The moment you add these annotations in your Java code, then more information will be passed to the Java compiler about that Java code. Okay, you are going to understand this statement soon. Why I'm saying that this annotations purpose is to provide more or additional information to the Java compiler. This particular statement you are going to understand soon in a practical way. I'm going to show that. Okay, how the annotations in Java are going to pass additional or more information to the Java compiler. I'm going to show in some time. That's fine. But what are the different inbuilt annotations that I am going to practically demonstrate in this video session? These are the below are the three annotations I am going to practically demonstrate. First one is override guys. Override. Second one is deprecated annotation. Okay. Annotations have the symbol known as @ symbol at the beginning. Okay. Then next one is @ suppress warnings. This is another annotation. These are the three different inbuilt annotations that I am going to practically demonstrate in this video session. At the same time, you'll understand the purpose of the annotations. When I demonstrate these three annotations for you, you'll automatically understand the purpose of the annotations in Java. So let's switch to the practical mode now. Let's create a new class. Let's say class A. Let's create a new class known as class A. Click on finish. Let's create another class, say class B, and click on finish. And in this class A, let me create a method guys. Public static. You cannot give, it's up to you whether you want to give static or not, that's fine. With or without, both are good. Public void, let's give some name here. I want to give some name as add numbers here. I want to make it big, okay? I want to make this method big one because I have some explanation to be done. That's the reason I have given three word method name here. System.out.println. I'll simply say inside method of class A. Similarly, what I do is I want to make this class B a child class of class A. I want to make this class B a child class of class A. So what I will do is class B extends class A, I will say. These are the things that I am getting done just to make sure that I can explain this first annotation known as @ override. Okay, I have to create two classes, out of which one class should be the child class of another class, and this parent class should have some method. These are the requirements. Then only I can explain this override guys. So after you reach all this criteria, now my requirement is to create a method which will override this method. Okay, yeah, I want to create a method which can override this method. So how to do that guys? Since I already know in advance that I want to create a method which can override this method, I'm going to, since I know in advance that I am going to create a method which is going to override this method, that thing I know in advance. So what I will do is I will try to use this @ override annotation because I already know in advance that I am going to create an override method for this particular method in the parent class. Override. @ override. Fine. So under this, I'll create the same method. I will try to create the same method. So I'll try to create something like public void add number here. Like this, I just added. And inside this system.out.println, I'll say inside overridden method of class B. I'll write. But guys, I'm getting a compiler error. Can anyone understand why I'm getting a compiler error here? The reason behind that is I did a mistake. Am I really overriding this particular method in the parent class? Is this method is really overriding this method in the parent class? If you think it is not, guys, because you made a mistake in the method name. Here we have add numbers here, but here we have add number here. Here add numbers here add number here. Is there any difference? Yes, we are missing a small letter known as S. Then you see the compiler error has been gone. The compiler error has been gone. Once this particular method is really overriding this method, then only the compiler error is gone. How come the compiler got to know that we are going to override this particular method in the parent class? Just because of this override annotation. What if this override annotation is not there here? What if I just make the same mistake? In this kind of case, guys, I thought like I just created a child class, and I also created a method which can override the methods in the parent class. But I don't know, I made a mistake here. I'm ignorant here, guys. Okay, I'm not aware of that. I didn't create a I didn't create a overridden method because I unintentionally or due to my mistake, I just made a spelling mistake here. But I'm thinking that this will override this method. This is a problem, guys. With if you don't use the annotation here, you don't know whether this particular method is really overriding this method or not. Because because you will not be in a position to identify your error, right? Identify your mistake. How can you know that this S is missing? This small mistake, everyone can do this, right? That's where, guys, if you write this kind of annotations like at the rate, if your intention is to create some override methods, if you already know that in advance, then if you try to create add this at the rate override annotation before the such kind of methods which are going to override the methods in the parent class, then you'll be able to know the mistakes, because here this information is passed to the some information is passed to the Java compiler that this method is going to override this method. Now Java compiler will come into place and find out whether this method is really overriding this method or not. If any case this method is not overriding this method, it will tell you in the form of compiler errors. This is a benefit, guys. How we are passing more or additional information to the Java compiler? This is how you are passing it. By adding simple override method, my Java compiler got more information about this method, that this method has to override this method. Now Java compiler is checking whether this method is really overriding this method or not. If not, it will give a compiler error. That's how more or additional information is passed to the Java compiler by these annotations. That is the main purpose of the annotations, guys. Okay, until you correct your mistakes, the errors will not be gone. It's a kind of very good practice, right? If you provide at the rate override, is the best practice for you. Fine. That's one thing. Is there any other advantage that I am going to get by using this at the rate override annotation before this method? Yes, guys. For example, you have written this code and some other person is going through this code. He can clearly understand, either you after some time or another person going through the code can clearly understand that this method is overriding this method. How, guys? With this annotation. This annotation means override. That means he will get a point, right? This method is overriding some method. He'll get to know that this method is overriding that method. Because of this at the rate override, he will understand that this method is overriding some other method. So readability also will increase, guys. What actually is the result of this kind of advantage? The readability. While user is going through your code, he can understand that this method is overriding some other method. So such kind of help is also done. Apart from passing more information to the compiler, the readability also got increased, because user will now know that this particular method is overriding some other method just because of this at the rate override method put before this method. Okay, guys. So I explained all the purposes of these annotations along using this at the rate override method. But now let's find out how we can use other other annotations. Okay. So I'm going to directly explain the usage of this at the rate deprecated and at the rate suppress warnings. Fine. So let's start with this suppress warnings. So what I will do here is let that be there, not a problem. Now here inside this method, I'll create an object for the array list. Array list is equal to new array list. In collections framework, we have a predefined class known as array list, right? I'm just going to create that object for this array list. That's fine. Over the mouse, and click on select this import array list from java.util package. But when you do so, I'm getting some warning messages. Why I'm getting this warning messages for this array list class, guys? Because I need to provide the type of objects that you need to enter into this array list. That is generic type I have to provide. Here generics I have to provide for this array list, guys. For example, if I provide something like integer, you see the warning message has been gone up to here, but warning message is still here. I need to add something like less than greater than symbol here. You see complete warning messages for this array list class has been gone. What if I don't want to put this generic type here? I just want to remove this out. Okay, no matter what I don't want. But at same time, I am seeing some warning messages. If I remove that generic type, I'm seeing some warning messages. What if I don't want to see these warning messages? What I have to do? Is there any way that I can avoid these warning messages still after I don't want to provide any generic types here? Yes, guys, there is a way. Hold the mouse on this and you will get an option to add suppress warnings. This is annotation, guys. This is a Java annotation. Okay. Suppress warnings. In the brackets, you have to provide raw type. For this kind of warning messages, in order to avoid such kind of warning messages, you have to add this. When you do so, this will get added here. You can make it global for this particular method by adding it before the method itself, like this. Okay. So at the rate suppress warnings raw types. On adding this annotation before this method, you see I'm not getting any warning messages. Despite of not providing the generic type, I'm not getting the warning messages because this annotation is clearing those warning messages for me. Intentionally, I just inform the compiler. Okay, this annotation is passing the message to the compiler that okay, the user don't want to give the generic types. He knows that he don't want to give the generic types. Please remove the warning messages. Compiler has ignored that. Okay, ignored the warning messages and remove it from the code. So that's how we have to use at the rate suppress warning messages when you don't want to see some warning messages. Okay, guys, that's another thing. Next annotation is deprecated annotation. So let me explain about the deprecated annotation. Let me create a different class for that. Delete it. Create a new class. Name this class as some demo class. I will make this example simple, guys. That's why I'm creating a new class here. Public static void main. Just create a main method, and here let's try to create another method that is public static void some add method int a comma some int b like this. In this method, I'll write down something like a plus b. This method is all good. But before this method, if I say at the rate deprecated, when I add this annotation, immediately you see the method name is strike off. That means this is outdated. We are telling the compiler this annotation. Using this annotation, we are telling the Java compiler that don't use this method. Okay. This method is, you are just passing the information to the Java compiler that this method is deprecated, that is outdated. Okay, user should not use this method. Just pass the information if user tried to use this. So in that case, if I try to use this method, how to use this method, guys? Just I have to call from the main method, right? If I try to call this method, let's say add a 5 comma 6 like this and put a semicolon here. So now here also it got striked off. Now user will understand that okay, this is deprecated. That's why it got striked off. We should not be using this. Now how this is getting striked off? Java compiler is striking it off for you because this method is marked with at the rate deprecated annotation. That means people should not be using. So like this, guys, using at the rate deprecated method annotation, we can mark the methods as deprecated. Where if you have some latest methods, we can mark the older methods as deprecated or outdated, so that user will not use the outdated methods by seeing this striking off on the method names. Fine, guys. This is all about the override, deprecated, and suppress warnings annotations, which are the few inbuilt annotations in Java. There are many other inbuilt annotations, guys, but as part of this session, I only wanted to explain about these three mostly used inbuilt annotations of Java. So that's it, guys. That's all about this session. Thank you, guys. Bye.